Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Steve with Real Progressives. We're facing what may be the most critical time in the United States history as all the world is blowing up around us. There is conflict everywhere. And unfortunately, the leadership of our nation is more than willing to engage in that. So as you look at the decisions that we have to make in the next 20-some days, it's very important that we understand what's at stake. Do we want our children to live, or do we want them to die? Do we want the world's children to live, or do we want to create new generations of terrorists? Have you decided that you've seen enough bloodshed? We need to show the bloodshed, folks. I'm getting to the point now where our direct action on social media needs to be to show the terrors of war. We cannot hide it any longer. We need people to understand that just voting for a war hawk isn't just business as usual. That what it is in fact murder by proxy. Now, I've said that term millions of times, and I'll continue to say it again. When we vote for a murderer, when we vote for a war hawk, we have the blood of that entire thing on our hands. There is no such thing as a benign vote. You are your vote. But getting past this election even, let's say November 9th comes around, horrible, wretched, disgusting people vote for Hillary Clinton. And we're left with no anti-war movement but you and I. If it comes down to just you and I, do you have what it takes to take to the streets to block war? Do you have what it takes to get up in arms and tell people, damn it, I am not sacrificing my children to your wars? Do you have what it takes to fight for someone else's children? When you don't have a stake in the game, when you know you're not going to war, do you have what it takes to fight for someone else? Are you willing to sit idly by and let it happen? Are you looking at people in, Syria as not real people, but something else? Cartoon characters, maybe a book somewhere, or maybe a picture on the internet? Do you realize they're human beings? Do you realize the animals that are killed in our wars are lives as well? Do you realize the ecology that we destroy in our wars? Do you realize that we have that on our hands if we don't actively speak out? Being a passive observer is committing the crime, in my opinion. When it comes time, are you going to stand and fight? Are you willing to take to the streets? Are you willing to organize? Are you willing to stand in defiance and opposition to the war? Or will you just find yourself saying, well, they had to do something, right? We just had to go in there and do something. Folks, every event that happens in this world is not our making, but we are in control of how we respond to it. We do have the right to resist. We have the right to say, no, I'm not participating in that. So when we elect leaders, and those leaders have a D in front of their name, we need to be perfectly aware that the bombs that come from the D's are just as lethal as the bombs that come from the R's. So you need to ask yourself, labels be damned. What is your decision-making process like? Do you make good decisions? Are you a peaceful person? According to Jimmy Carter, when Secretary Clinton was in charge of the State Department, she did next to nothing to pursue peace. And she did everything to push the Obama administration further and further to war. The decision-making processes are so horrific that if we don't understand that we need to be preparing a loyal opposition, an anti-war movement so strong and powerful that they can't ignore us, then many of your children will die. Perhaps even my own. And many more that you'll never ever meet. And if we don't stand in opposition to that, the blood is on our hands. The blood will be on our hands. I have never ever been more worried about our country before in my life as it pertains to going into war. The saber rattling with Russia, I would like to believe, as always, that cooler heads would prevail, that this is all just puffing up to negotiate or whatever. But even that is counter to what a peaceful nation would do. That is not leadership by example, that's leadership by the sword. You play with the sword, you die by the sword. And then all of a sudden, once we create new terrorists, guess what happens here at home to you and I? That's right. All of a sudden, social media is clamped down. All of a sudden, they're spying on us more and more. Is that what you want? Are you aware of the fascism? Are you aware of the martial law that will come your way if you stand in defiance? If you don't take a stand now, I assure you, it will be too late when it finally comes to hit. When the problem is here, it's too late to organize, folks. When the war hits, it's too late to organize. The best you're doing at that point is damage control. The time to organize is before the war hits. We're already out there blowing people to smithereens. We're already out there in all these foreign nations dropping bombs through drone strikes. We're already out there with our CIA destabilizing governments. At what point in time does the anti-war left decide it's going to stand up and remember that it's anti-war? We're fighting about the Dakota pipeline, and that's great. That's aces. That's the bee's knees, and it's important. But folks, we're about to head into some warfare that we may not be able to pull ourselves out of if we don't get ourselves organized and ready to fight. Where is the loyal opposition? Where is the anti-war movement, folks? Where are we? I see an awful lot of people worrying about Donald Trump, and they don't realize that the real devil has got a D in front of her. The only one that has a proven track record of killing people. Jill Stein has gratefully come out and said, hey, why is peace a dirty word? Why is peace suddenly just a 60s cartoon? At what point in time are you planning to rise up and support Jill Stein, the only candidate for peace in this election? At what point in time are you going to stand up for the lone progressive? Folks, if we don't stand up now, after the election, it will be too late. We've got to start the wheels in motion for blocking the next wars now. I don't know what more to tell you. Real Progressives is going to continue beating the peace drum. We're going to beat the peace drum. And we're going to hope to God that we find a way to organize properly to get us out in the streets and to make sure that they know that war, she's a whore. And we don't want her. We don't want her. We want to make peace a good word again. We don't want it to be the word that people go, oh, you're just going to make our country go to hell because you're for peace. We need to be explaining, not just exacerbating, but explaining why war is lethal, why we've got to stop it. Are you with me, folks? Are you with Real Progressives? Can we really, truly put an end to our nation's imperialism? Can we take to the streets? Can we make our elected officials understand that we are done with war? How committed are you to stopping the next war? We have got to do this, folks, because I don't want my kids dead. And I don't want your kids dead. This is Steve with Real Progressives, hoping you stand against war and join with us to take to the streets. Thank you.